The number circled on the assessment sheet was 22. My physical therapist ran a standardized leg strength test at my first appointment, and 22 put me in the bottom third for men my age. I was 65 at the time. I had been active most of my life, and I was looking at a clipboard that said my legs were quietly losing the fight. Think about what that actually means in daily life, in a real one. It means getting out of a chair becomes something you think about instead of something you just do. It means the stair rail is no longer optional. It means the thing that gives you independence, the ability to move through your own house and your own neighborhood under your own power, is shrinking year by year. And the change is quiet enough that you can miss it until you cannot. Nobody made money telling me that breakfast could change that trajectory. The supplement industry would rather sell you a $35 protein powder with a label full of ingredients you cannot pronounce. Your doctor has 10 minutes and a full waiting room, and blood pressure and cholesterol numbers will take up most of that time. There is no money in the cheap answer, and the cheap answer rarely gets explained. My name is Wayne Ellison. I am 68 years old. I am not a doctor, and this is educational, not medical advice. After that physical therapy appointment, and after a separate conversation about my blood pressure that I never wanted to have, I started reading the studies myself. The ones from the National Institutes of Health, the ones from Mayo Clinic and the Cleveland Clinic. I sat at my kitchen table with a highlighter and a stack of printed pages the way I used to work through technical manuals when I was still employed. And what I found changed what I put on my plate every single morning. Today, I am going to walk you through 5 things I eat before 9 in the morning, and I will tell you the kind of research behind each one so you can check it yourself or bring it to your own doctor. None of it is complicated. None of it requires a specialist, and I will tell you exactly what to write down and ask at your next appointment. One of these 5 is the one that stopped me cold when I found it. It looks like something you push to the side of a plate. Nothing about it says leg strength, but the research behind it is the reason I have not skipped it in 3 years. Stay with me, because by the time we get to number 3, I think you will understand why. How do you keep leg muscle when the default after 60 is to lose it? A meaningful part of the answer starts at breakfast, and it starts with protein. Number 1, eggs. I know, you have heard about eggs your entire life. But the detail I did not know until I read the research is what changed how I think about the first meal of the day. Muscle tissue is active around the clock. It breaks down and rebuilds constantly. The process of rebuilding requires a trigger, a specific signal that tells your muscles it is time to synthesize new protein. One of the most important triggers for that process is an amino acid called leucine. NIH-funded research on protein and muscle maintenance in older adults has found that leucine plays a central role in activating what researchers call muscle protein synthesis. Without enough of it at a given meal, the rebuilding signal stays weak and your muscles do not get the cue they need. Eggs are one of the best natural sources of leucine you can put on a plate. 2 eggs in the morning gives you a meaningful dose of complete protein, including that leucine signal, along with something else I did not expect to find in the research: vitamin D. NIH guidance on vitamin D and physical function has connected adequate vitamin D levels to better muscle strength and performance in older adults. As of 2026, the National Institutes of Health acknowledges that many older Americans have low vitamin D levels and do not know it. Eggs, particularly the yolk, are one of the few food sources of vitamin D outside of fatty fish and fortified products. Most people tracking their leg strength at breakfast skip right past the vitamin D question. The research suggests that may be an oversight worth correcting. For years, I skipped breakfast or had toast and called it enough. I told myself a solid dinner covered my protein needs for the day. The research on protein timing in older adults shifted that thinking. Studies suggest that spreading protein intake across the day, including a meaningful portion at breakfast, may be more effective for muscle maintenance than concentrating it in one evening meal. Older muscle tissue appears less efficient at using dietary protein than younger muscle tissue, which means timing matters more as you get older. The research makes that point clearly. What I do: 2 eggs most mornings, scrambled, often with something stirred in, whole eggs. I do not separate them. The safety note is worth stating plainly. If you have been told to limit dietary cholesterol for a specific cardiac reason, that conversation belongs with your doctor. The American Heart Association's guidance as of 2026 indicates that eggs can fit into a heart-healthy diet for most adults. But your doctor knows your specific situation and your specific numbers. Bring it up directly at your next visit. Now, I could have stopped at eggs. I did not. Number 2, oatmeal. This one gets dismissed as a heart food, and it is, but the reason I eat it every morning has more to do with my legs than my arteries. After 60, one of the quieter threats to leg strength is what chronically unstable blood sugar does to the body over time. Research cited by the Cleveland Clinic and the American Diabetes Association has connected chronically elevated blood sugar to a condition called sarcopenia, which is the medical term for age-related muscle loss. When blood sugar is spiking and dropping through the first hours of the day, your body is managing that instability instead of directing resources toward tissue maintenance and repair. Oatmeal, specifically old-fashioned rolled oats rather than the instant packets, provides slow-digesting carbohydrates and a type of soluble fiber called beta-glucan. Research indexed through the National Institutes of Health has found that oat beta-glucan fiber produces a more gradual blood sugar response than refined carbohydrates and shows consistent effects on inflammation markers as well. The Mayo Clinic references this fiber in its own guidance on heart and metabolic health. A calmer morning blood sugar curve becomes one of the more important details when muscle maintenance is the goal. I add a tablespoon of ground flaxseed most mornings, stirred in while the oats are warm. Flaxseed is a plant-based source of omega-3 fatty acids, and I will come back to why that matters for muscle in a few minutes. What I do: half a cup of dry, old-fashioned oats, cooked on the stovetop, with flaxseed stirred in. The flavored instant packets often carry significant added sugar, which works against the blood sugar point I just made. Managing blood sugar medication alongside dietary changes is a conversation for your doctor. Do not adjust your medication or your diet around medication without that conversation first. For a while, I thought these two changes were enough. I had the eggs and the oats. I assumed I had covered the main bases. That did not last. Before I get to number 3, a quick one. If you are finding this useful, subscribe and drop your age in the comments. Tell me what number you are working on. I read every one. So we have covered 2, but when I got to number 3, I almost put the paper down to make sure I had found the right study. Number 3, leafy greens. And this is the one I told you to stay for. I know what that sounds like. Spinach, arugula, that is a salad ingredient. I would have said the same thing 3 years ago, but here is what the research showed me. Your muscles need blood flow to function well. When legs are weak, part of what is happening is that the delivery system, the blood vessels supplying oxygen and nutrients to the muscle tissue, has lost some of the efficiency it had 20 or 30 years ago. This is where something called dietary nitrates enter the picture, and this is the detail that changed my morning. Leafy greens, particularly spinach, arugula, and beet greens, are among the highest dietary sources of natural nitrates you can find in ordinary food. When you eat them, your body converts those nitrates into nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is one of the primary signals your blood vessels use to relax and widen. Better blood vessel function means more efficient delivery of oxygen to the muscles you are trying to preserve. NIH-funded research on dietary nitrates and physical performance has found associations between higher dietary nitrate intake and improved muscle efficiency in older adults. Researchers found that muscles with access to higher dietary nitrate levels appeared to use oxygen more effectively during activity. And no, I'm not making that up. Pay attention to this next detail because it explains everything. The amounts that showed up in this research are achievable through normal food portions. Regular servings of whole food are sufficient here. A serving of spinach cooked into your eggs, a side of arugula at breakfast. That is the whole protocol. Nothing exotic or expensive. That's not a typo, by the way. One of the most practical things I found for leg strength and circulation was something I had been walking past every morning without a second thought. Here is what changed for me. I had been thinking about leg strength as a protein problem, which it partly is, but the research pushed me to also think about it as a blood flow problem. You can have the right nutrients in your food, but if the delivery system has slipped in efficiency, the muscles do not receive those nutrients as well as they should. The leafy greens address a different part of the equation than the eggs do, which, looking back, was either incredibly brave of me to believe from a piece of printed research or incredibly simple. I will let you decide. What I do: I wilt a handful of spinach directly into my scrambled eggs while they finish cooking. It takes about 30 seconds. The spinach disappears into the eggs and adds almost nothing in terms of taste or texture. Some mornings, I use a side of arugula instead. Both work. The limitation here matters, and I will be direct about it. If you take a blood thinner like warfarin, leafy greens and their vitamin K content are a conversation you must have with your doctor before changing your daily intake. Dietary vitamin K affects how warfarin works, and managing that interaction belongs entirely with a clinician. Tell your doctor what you are eating. Ask whether a consistent daily amount is safer than an inconsistent one, and follow their guidance. Do not skip that step. Everything I had found so far, the eggs, the oats, the greens, pointed to one more gap I had not filled, and the fix was already in my refrigerator. Number 4. Greek yogurt. I added Greek yogurt because of the protein timing research I mentioned with the eggs. 2 eggs at breakfast is a real start, but the studies I found in NIH-indexed literature on protein distribution in older adults suggested that a second protein feeding within the same morning, or at least early in the day, may better support muscle protein synthesis than a single morning dose followed by nothing until lunch. Greek yogurt is high in protein and contains casein, a slower digesting form of dairy protein that releases amino acids over several hours rather than all at once. That extended release gives your muscles a second signal within the same morning, after the eggs have already triggered the first one. 2 leucine signals before noon is what the research logic pointed me toward. Mayo Clinic and NIH guidance on nutrition for older adults both note that many people over 60 undereat protein. Appetite tends to decrease with age, and the traditional American plate still tilts toward carbohydrates over protein at most meals. Getting 2 meaningful protein feedings before noon was a deliberate adjustment based on what I had read. What I do: half a cup of plain Greek yogurt with no added flavoring and no added sugar. The flavored versions often carry more sugar than I want in the morning, and the protein content in plain Greek yogurt is meaningfully higher than most flavored varieties. I add the walnuts on top, which brings me to number 5. If you have a dairy sensitivity, or a reason your doctor has given you to limit saturated fat, low-fat cottage cheese serves the same protein purpose and works the same way here. Non-dairy alternatives vary widely in protein content, so if you go that route, check the label carefully rather than assuming they are equivalent. Number 5. Walnuts. I mentioned omega-3 fatty acids when I talked about the flaxseed in the oatmeal. Walnuts are where I get a second and more concentrated plant-based source of the same thing, and where that loop closes. Research on omega-3 fatty acids and muscle loss in older adults has been building for several years. NIH-funded studies and reviews in geriatric nutrition have found associations between higher omega-3 intake from food sources and slower rates of age-related muscle loss. The proposed mechanism involves omega-3's role in reducing systemic inflammation, and chronic low-grade inflammation has been identified in the research literature as one of the contributing factors in accelerated muscle breakdown after 60. Which, looking back, is straightforward logic. If low-grade inflammation works against muscle tissue and omega-3s are associated with quieting that process, having them consistently at breakfast follows naturally. The supplement industry just does not explain it for free, because whole food sources are items nobody can put a label on and mark up. A small handful of walnuts most mornings, on top of the Greek yogurt. That is it. I do not also take fish oil capsules. If you are considering omega-3 supplements rather than food sources, that is a specific conversation for your doctor, particularly if you take aspirin or a blood thinner regularly. This video is about food. Supplementation is its own separate conversation and one your doctor should be part of. If I had stopped at number 4, I would have been close. I would not have been there yet. That is the 5. Let me put it together quickly. Eggs for leucine and vitamin D, both of which the research connects to muscle protein synthesis and muscle function in older adults. Oatmeal with flaxseed for a steady blood sugar curve through the morning and a first dose of anti-inflammatory plant-based fats. Leafy greens cooked into the eggs for dietary nitrates and the blood vessel support that follows. Greek yogurt for a second protein signal before noon, using a slower digesting protein that extends the window. Walnuts for omega-3 fatty acids and the anti-inflammatory piece that ties the morning together. None of this cost me a fortune. The spinach in my eggs costs less than $1 a serving. None of it is a miracle, and I am not going to tell you otherwise. The research shows associations and mechanisms. No food study delivers guarantees. Your situation is your own, and what shifted in my numbers is my experience. Your path may be entirely different. But here is what I know from my own experience. 3 years ago, I was using both hands to lift my own right leg onto an exam table. I have been eating close to this breakfast for the better part of 2.5 years. My physical therapy numbers went up. My doctor noticed and asked what I had changed. I am not claiming breakfast did it alone, because I also changed other things. But breakfast is where the research told me to start, and breakfast is where I started. The jar of oats on my counter has been there for 4 years. It is the most boring part of my morning. I would not change it for anything. Write down what you want to ask at your next visit. The protein timing question. The leafy greens piece if you are on a blood thinner. The vitamin D question if you have not had your levels checked recently. Bring those to your doctor before you change anything, especially if you are on medication. That conversation matters. If this helped, subscribe and tell me in the comments what number you are working on. I am 68. I got my own numbers moving and I read every comment. Take care of yourself. And one more thing. If what we covered today connects to your blood sugar, I have a separate video called What I Changed at Breakfast When My A1C Came Back Borderline. It goes right alongside everything you just heard. Tap it on the end card right now and keep watching.